Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel for more stories. I married a lawyer, and while you might think that means we're living the dream, that's not quite accurate. I met Sarah while we were attending separate community colleges to save on costs. She was intelligent, even brilliant, and could engage in discussions about almost anything she had read. However, she was also a bit naive, overly trusting, and lacked practicality when it came to real-world situations. Junior college tuition is only a fraction of what universities charge, and finances were a major concern for us. My father is a carpenter with just a high school diploma, and his additional education came from hands-on experience. While he always had work, it wasn't particularly lucrative. Naturally, I grew up working for him, and I thought I saw all his flaws. He was stubborn, didn't listen well, and often fired people he thought were too full of themselves. Unfortunately, he didn't realize he needed smart people, and often juggled more projects than he could handle. Because of this, it was rare for a job to come in under budget, and the growth of his company was limited. I was determined not to follow his example. Getting a solid education was my way out. Sarah and I met in a summer class a couple of months before we both transferred to California State University. I took advantage of a self-directed studies program, enrolling in classes like electrical engineering, civil engineering, chemistry, history, and civics. I overloaded my schedule since it didn't cost extra, and as long as I got a B or higher, I was happy. This shotgun approach to learning taught me how to write, think logically, and identify the core of any problem. I ended up knowing a lot about things that interested me, but little about what didn't. Sarah, on the other hand, was studying pre-law, taking a lighter course load while aiming for straight A's, which is ideal for a future lawyer. You definitely want a lawyer who knows 100% of the law, not just 70 to 80%. To me, college was like a trade school for life. I aimed to learn everything I needed and a bit more to build a future my father never could. We graduated together with bachelor's degrees. Sarah got lucky. Without any family connections or glowing recommendations, a law school in Lakeview accepted her and even awarded her a modest scholarship. That summer, we moved to Lakeview and got married. I had finally escaped my father's iron grip, though I traded it for Sarah's gentle one. Her father, confident in her bright future and certain of my impending financial failure, insisted she get a prenuptial agreement. He also gave us a generous wedding gift, a 12% down payment on a house of our choice. The prenup essentially stated that whatever she owned or earned was hers alone, and if we divorced, no alimony or child support would be exchanged. Each of us would keep what we earned, so the wedding gift was really hers, not ours, as he didn't expect us to buy a house anytime soon. I agreed, but insisted that the same terms apply to both of us. I made sure she couldn't claim my money, child support, or alimony, and I also suggested we not be responsible for each other's debts. She was hesitant since she had significant student loans, but I pointed out that if I went bankrupt as a contractor and creditors went after me, she could be liable too. That settled the matter, and her father was thrilled that his family was protected from what he saw as my inevitable failures. We started our marriage with separate credit cards and bank accounts. As the more financially savvy one, I handled our finances, earning money, paying bills, and signing checks for both of us. I even set up a system to track our income and expenses. Since Sarah wasn't earning much during law school, the income division was mostly theoretical. Lakeview treated me well, and I found a decent job with a contractor, spending 2 years learning the area and supporting us. Of course, Sarah was accumulating what seemed like an enormous amount of student debt, all of which she would start repaying after graduation. But we weren't too worried. After all, lawyers earn a lot of money. Despite Sarah's advice and my father-in-law calling me a fool, I struck out on my own. I can't blame them, though my dad had said the same thing. Still, I'm proud to say I made money from the beginning. It helped that Sarah and I matched each other's dedication to our careers, putting in long hours. Our time together was precious, so I made sure to be available whenever she had time off, thanks to my flexible schedule. It was hard, but we were young, strong, and in love. Sarah timed her pregnancy so that she gave birth a month after graduation, and she hit the goal within 2 weeks, delivering a beautiful baby girl. However, her residency was even more demanding than law school, as she was essentially an underpaid servant at the law firm, a handmaiden to the god of litigation. I jokingly mispronounced it as the god of lawsuits and teased that the L stood for Lucy, so Lucy lawsuit became a joke for the person causing all the legal troubles. Looking back, I'm not sure if our marriage really survived her residency. You always hear stories about residents getting involved with each other during night shifts, though I'm sure Sarah didn't because she was constantly exhausted. Honestly, the only difference between lying next to her and an ice block was the temperature. It was a tough and lonely time, made bearable only by our daughter and my growing business. Unfortunately, we got used to not being around each other. Her internship and later her legal practice demanded 55 to 60 hours a week with an unpredictable schedule. Meanwhile, I continued caring for our daughter. I kept a planner to organize both my work and personal life. It was quite the task managing the schedules for my daughter, my wife, and myself. Daycare was a necessity, though it bothered me deeply that my daughter spent so much time with strangers. To be closer, I moved my office to a cheap storefront I had purchased across from the daycare center. I hired a kind, grandmotherly woman named Lydia as my office manager. While I needed her full-time to handle calls and other tasks, there wasn't enough work to keep her busy. She suggested watching my daughter for the last 3 hours of the workday, which delighted both my daughter and me. Sarah's Freedom Day arrived when her internship ended. We spent a couple of weeks relaxing at the beach before she began working as a corporate attorney at a small suburban firm. She was eager to buy a house, and at the time, banks and mortgage brokers were offering no money down mortgages without credit checks. Sarah, feeling empowered by her new salary, picked out a house. I had little say in the matter since, as she pointed out, it was her income. While I preferred a pre-war home, built between 1910 and 1950, she had her heart set on a new McMansion. Ultimately, we bought the cheaply constructed new house, located about a 40-minute drive from my office. Her father's wedding gift became her independence present too. His contribution amounted to a $28,000 down payment on the house, a significant sum for him. However, with Sarah dreaming of a $780,000 mansion, his gift barely covered the taxes and closing costs. The mortgage alone came out to $4,300 per month at 6% interest, and after adding taxes, heating, upkeep, car expenses, and various insurances, the monthly total rose to $6,100. On top of that, her student loans were another $4,700 per month. I tried to convince her to consider a more affordable house in the $250,000 to $340,000 range, but she resisted, saying, "Honey, this is what I've worked for all these years. I couldn't believe we would be living in a huge house but still eating beans to save money." It was absurd to me, but I lost that argument. Things only got worse over the next few years as she took out equity loans to furnish the house with flashy, low-quality furniture. It irritated me that the fine traditional furniture I had inherited from my uncle, all handmade by him, was relegated to my den and a spare bedroom. Going so far into debt was insanity, in my opinion. In my business, I watched debt like a hawk, knowing that undercapitalization could sink a company faster than anything else, except foolishness. Business was booming for me, though, and I wanted more family time, so I decided to move my office closer to home. Opportunity knocked when I was working on a major project restoring a Roaring Twenties mansion. I had already billed over $340,000, and that was just for the structural and exterior work. Unfortunately, the homeowner was hit by the financial crisis and had to sell. I had a mechanic's line on the property because he still owed me $115,000, though about $28,000 of that was for materials I had contracted for but hadn't yet needed. On the property, there was a beautiful gatehouse and carriage shed located about 10 minutes from my home. It sat on an acre of land that was mostly rocky hillside but had a lovely view. It was connected to the main estate by an unused 20-foot driveway that wound up the hill. It was easy to separate this part of the property from the mansion, and although the buildings appeared to be in bad shape, they were structurally sound. I offered to buy it for the amount he owed me, plus $45,000 in cash, and he quickly agreed. I finished the ongoing work and set up a straw company to purchase the property. I converted the carriage shed into offices while preserving the historical exterior, including the arched double doors, which kept the option open to use it as a garage in the future. With my new office ready, I began renovating the gatehouse whenever my crew had downtime. Despite how significant this new office was to me, Sarah didn't seem to care. When I showed her the space, she assumed I was renting it and wasn't interested in any details, not even the cost. She commented that the place looked old-fashioned and suggested it should be torn down and replaced with something nicer. It was disheartening that such a major part of my life meant so little to her. That was the day I began questioning whether marrying her had been the right decision. Still, I reminded myself that all marriages have ups and downs. I made an effort to praise her and show her attention, hoping things would improve. We had a circle of couples we enjoyed spending time with, some lawyers, some not. Most were well-off business or civic leaders, with a few non-profit managers in the mix. While we weren't wealthy, we certainly weren't middle class either. If you didn't know the amount of debt Sarah carried, you'd think we had it made. As you'd expect, some lawyers found it hard to socialize with me, and some of my business and engineering contacts couldn't relate to Sarah gradually. Her social life started revolving mostly around the legal community, but we did find a few couples we both got along with. At the same time, I started noticing a shift in our relationship. More and more, I was taking on the role of family support. Any change in her schedule meant I had to adjust mine to accommodate. This wasn't new, but it was becoming more frequent. I often had to drop whatever I was doing to pick up our daughter because the lawyer was running late. She would often agree to do something with me or our daughter, only to cancel at the last minute. I understand that being a lawyer is important for many people, but we were her family, and it became clear where her priorities lay. Lydia, our office manager, was taking on more childcare responsibilities than I felt was fair, though she never complained. Modern life is full of interruptions, and I often get calls from job sites or suppliers after hours. I manage 2 phones, one for work and one for personal use. My wife also had her phone, and 99% of the time, I could resolve after-hours calls within minutes. For years, it was the same for Sarah, unless she was on call, but something changed in late spring. Her phone started going off more frequently, and she would drop everything and rush to the office. That's part of being a lawyer, I suppose, but Sarah was a corporate attorney at a large firm where they rotated being on call, and it seemed like she was taking on more than her share. One Friday in early June, we spent a hot afternoon working in the yard, handling outdoor house maintenance. After getting dirty and sweaty, we both showered before dinner. I had hoped for some intimacy, but she turned me down, promising we'd have a good time later in the evening, which worked for me. We were sitting on the patio after dinner, enjoying coffee while listening to the happy sounds of children playing. This is the life, I thought. Around 8 p.m., her pager went off. Sarah looked frustrated, glanced at it, stood up, and said, "I need to head to the office." I should probably change first. She looked great in a clean white t-shirt with a big red cross and the slogan "Give Blood for Life" fitting, right? She paired it with white shorts and red high-top sneakers, a casual yet stylish look. I asked, "Why would you change again? You just got clean, and you'll need to change into office clothes once you're there anyway." She seemed distracted, responding, "Oh, you're right. Well, I have to go. They'll be home when I get back a little after 9. My daughter Sophie came in, exhausted and dirty from playing. "You're such a mess. We might as well take you out for ice cream before your bath," I said. Squeals of laughter followed, along with a call to her summer best friend, Katie. We had to drive across town because only Baker's Delight, which served homemade ice cream, would satisfy Sophie, a girl after my own heart. As I sat on a picnic bench outside Murphy's, licking a pistachio ice cream cone, I casually admired the moms in their light summer outfits. Then I saw something rare, a 1949 Harley-Davidson Chief, bright red with white skirts and gleaming chrome. It cruised by with a deep, satisfying rumble that new motorcycles could only dream of copying. I recognized it immediately because my older brother had a detailed die-cast model of one, which I still envy. The rider was a tall guy slouched in the seat, wearing matching jeans, a jean jacket, and black leather boots. A woman rode behind him, holding on tightly, sporting an American flag helmet, a white Give Blood t-shirt, blue jeans, and shiny red sneakers. She'd regret not wearing a jacket as the summer evening cooled down. Trying to stay carefree after that was tough. I doubt the kids noticed my shift in mood, as they more than made up for it with laughter and excitement. I felt guilty, but I was relieved that I'd forgotten to mail her quarterly student loan payment that Friday. About 2/3 of that money had come from my own funds, and it would have been a waste. That was the last straw. I was done paying for anything that was solely hers. If she had to cover all her house, car, and personal expenses, her checking and savings accounts would be drained quickly. I continued to handle most of our bills, but used her account exclusively for her share. By Wednesday morning, I had hired a divorce lawyer. He promised to review the prenuptial agreement, though he knew the lawyer who drafted it and believed it was airtight. Still, he reminded me that anything could be challenged. Although proving adultery wasn't necessary, it could be a useful tool if custody of our daughter became an issue, though. As usual, mothers tend to get custody. My next call was to a friend who was into antique cars. Indian Chief motorcycles are rare and valuable, and riding one just for fun is a bit of a Jay Leno move. He quickly identified the bike as likely belonging to Mr. Thomas Black, a big shot at Sarah's firm. Well, that cleared things up. The third call I made was to a private investigator recommended by my insurance agent, a man named Alex Pfizer. Though he went by Sam, I didn't think it was necessary to have him follow Sarah. I was sure she was only involved with one person. Albert Kane, her colleague, was another matter I wanted payback. I told Sam to dig up all he could on Mr. Kane and gave him the details I had. I expected to pay extra for quick results, but it must have been a slow time for him because he gave me a discount and got right to work. I paid him a $3,800 deposit for the first week and asked for photos, audio, and video if possible. I also told him to be discreet, as Kane had the resources to retaliate if he realized someone was investigating him. My fourth call was to one of my site managers, instructing him to pull some workers to focus on finishing the gatehouse at least enough to obtain an occupancy permit. The rest of the day was fairly typical, and I tried to keep things normal. I figured I had 2 to 3 weeks to shut down our marriage conveniently. That evening, during our usual coffee time, Sarah mentioned she'd be attending a legal conference in Denver from Tuesday to Friday the following week. It was sponsored by ML, and she had to go. "Where are you staying?" I asked. "One of Denver's best hotels, Sunset Towers," she replied. Curious, I pulled out my phone to look it up. "You've got to be kidding! Sunset Towers is in Cambridge, and it's a pretty ordinary hotel. Nothing special at all, and it's $150 a night," I pointed out, showing her the picture. She looked surprised. "Oh, I must have gotten the name wrong. I'll double check, but the date is correct. That night we had sex for the first time in what felt like forever. I considered it a personal weakness that I initiated it. I even used a condom, just like in the old days, and she didn't notice. The Tuesday before her conference turned out to be quite eventful. I met with my lawyer to review the draft of the divorce papers. He advised me to shield my business assets in case the prenuptial agreement, which he thought was solid, somehow got challenged. He also suggested I think about child support, but I protested. No prenuptial agreement will stop me from supporting my child. She's my daughter, and I want to provide for her. The lawyer advised me clearly, provide whatever support you want, but steer clear of the courts, making it official. My accountant said he needed a few weeks to stash away the cash reserves from the business. I joked that most contractors aim to pull money out of thin air, not hide it, and told him to make sure 75% of it was tucked away within a week. Later that afternoon, I met with the investigator face-to-face for the first time. He picked a local cafe for our meeting, explaining that he worked from home and preferred some people not know where to find him. "Mr. Smith, this is a first for me in all my years," he began. "This really is a first, and that's rare. Let me tell you, your Mr. Kane rents the same motel room every week, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, sometimes Fridays. Always the same room," he leaned in. "Now, here's the interesting part. Last Friday, he took a woman there. They stayed from noon until around 1:30. Here's her picture. He handed me a photo of a redhead I'd never seen before. Her name's Karen Jackson. She works for a visiting nurse company. I got her personnel info for you. The blinds were tight, so no pictures, but I've got the full audio. They came out all lovey-dovey. Here's another shot of them together." Afterward, he returned to the firm. Then, the investigator revealed the real surprise. At 5:00 p.m., Kane drove back to the same motel, arrived at 6:15, and went into the same room. At 6:25, another woman showed up, just like the first one, and went in. He slid another picture across the table. "I'm sorry to say, but this one's your wife. You already knew that though, didn't you? I've got the audio from this too," he added. "Welcome to the world of stamina enhancers. It's the first time I've seen a guy meet two women in the same room on the same day. Apparently he does this twice a week, sometimes more." He continued, "As you requested, I set the room up with sound and video recording equipment. Someone will be there to capture what happens whenever he's inside. Here's a disc with footage of your wife and one other woman we haven't identified yet. She arrived with Mr. Kane." I thanked him and asked, "If this all comes to light, is there any chance it could be traced back to you? This could get serious. Big money might come looking for the source of these pictures." He reassured me. "No, they'd never find me unless you told them. I'm careful. No fingerprints on the pictures or in the room." I instructed him to keep recording but dropped the outdoor surveillance. I paid him another $2,300 in cash and left with a bitter taste in my mouth, and it wasn't from the coffee. The next day, I closed our joint credit card accounts, explaining to Sarah that it was to better manage our finances. I also finalized the movement of our funds. Every week, I received a new CD from Sam with fresh videos. He had 2 cameras and probably 2 microphones set up. I watched all the footage, but I focused on the ones with my wife, examining every detail obsessively. I listened to every word and scrutinized each gesture. Oddly enough, it felt like therapy for me. The more I watched, the more detached I became from her. Physically, Kane seemed fine for his age, older than me by about 15 to 20 years, and clearly not into exercising. He had a similar build to me, although I was happy to note his waistline was 4 or 5 inches bigger. Kane typically took charge during these sessions, instructing the women what to do, and they eagerly followed his lead. Sarah responded with enthusiasm, doing whatever he asked without hesitation, clearly enjoying it. I couldn't help but wish she had been that way with me. Upon reflection, I realized that I had allowed our poor sex life to continue as it was. When Sarah said no, I never pushed. I let her control the dynamic in the bedroom. Now, Kane was being assertive, and she was willingly complying. It was simple. Really, everyone wants to please their partner. Maybe it was my fault for not expecting more. Meanwhile, work on the gatehouse was progressing well. A week before completion, I called my lawyer, only to find out he was on vacation. His assistant assured me the divorce papers would be ready by the following Tuesday, as promised. I was preparing to officially file for divorce and leave Sarah's house and her life behind. The night before her legal conference, while sipping wine on the patio, I made one final attempt to salvage our marriage. "Do you think my wife will ever come back?" I asked. "What are you talking about?" she replied, confused. "I'm talking about you. You've been drifting away from Sophie and me for a while now. It's like you're slowly leaving our family. I just want to know who you found to replace us and whether or not you're coming back." There was a long silence, and just as I was about to walk away, she spoke quietly. "He's a lawyer at the firm. I can't tell you his name, but I'm pretty sure we're in love. I think it's real." She paused. "You don't know right away. Emotions are strange like that. I'll know for sure in a month or so. And no, I don't want to give him up. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. I still love you." But her voice trailed off. I said nothing. "Michael, aren't you going to say anything?" she asked. "You haven't finished," I replied. "You were saying you love me, but I'd like to know for how long, how often, and most of all, why. What does he have that I don't?" "It's complicated," she said. "I do love you. Or at least I thought I did. But with him, it's different. We've been close for maybe a month, 6 weeks at most. There's no real reason it just happened. He's not better or worse than you, just different. So every time your phone goes off, you're either helping your struggling clients or catering to Mr. Lawsuit's needs, I asked, sarcastically. Give me your hand for a second. She extended her left hand, and I took it. Michael, don't be like that. It's not like that at all. I just need to be sure. And it's only for a few more weeks. I held her hand in both of mine, then smoothly slid off her wedding and engagement rings. She didn't seem to realize what had happened until I took off my own wedding band and dropped it into her hand. Hey, give them back. I can't go without them, they're mine. People will notice. Not my problem, I said, pulling 2 coins from my pocket and standing up. I flung them far into the yard as the light faded. She saw something shiny fly through the air, probably thinking it was her $15,000 worth of jewelry. If you'd wanted to keep the marriage those rings represented, we wouldn't be in this mess, I told her. And you'd be surprised how many people already know what you've been up to. Everyone in town knows about you too, so why not just tell them the whole story? Go ahead and boast about how lucky you are to have snagged the top lawyer's well-used tool. Let them know he adores you more than life itself, that he's planning to leave his wife and marry you, and that he's just waiting for the right moment to break the news. Fine by me. Michael, stop with the crude talk. How did you find out? She asked. I laughed. For all that education, you're still clueless. Every married guy tells his mistress he loves her and plans to leave his wife. That light keeps the affair going. The so-called virtuous women believe they need to stick around for a long-term commitment. The honest ones are in it for fun. And the gold diggers? Well, they're in it for the money. Sometimes the guy does divorce his wife, maybe 1 in 5, because the marriage was already failing. And sometimes he even marries the mistress, maybe another 1 in 5, but 24 out of 25 times he leaves her too. Still, maybe what you two have is real love. You might marry him, and both of you on your second marriages will stay faithful this time. Who knows? Maybe you'll even work on legal cases together in your spare time. She stormed upstairs, slamming doors as she went. What did she expect my reaction to be? I assembled a reality package to leave for her. It detailed the household costs, her net income minus student loans, mortgage payments, taxes, car payments, utilities, and insurance. The result? She was in the red by $2,000 a week, and that didn't even cover food, gas, or other essentials. I arranged the bill payments so that on D-Day, everything would be paid, leaving her with next to nothing in her accounts. The following morning, she reassured me again that it was indeed a legal conference, then left. I cancelled all our joint credit cards, though I left her one for business, so she wasn't entirely without access to money. I made copies of the bills and tax returns, figuring she'd need them. I even listed contact info for the oil burner guy, the landscaper, the snowplower, and a general handyman. Looking over our tax returns, I was pleased to see that, despite my efforts to hide income, I had earned more than her for the past 3 years. Good. Maybe it was too much information for her at that moment, but she was gone, and I wanted her to stay gone. Why give her any reason to come back? I pulled the tax returns from the stack. She'd get them eventually. The movers arrived at 10:00 a.m. on Tuesday. My shop used 1 truck, which took up most of the movers' time. I took all of my uncle's furniture and some other family heirlooms, including my bureau and everything from my closet. Being the considerate guy I am, I hired a cleaning service to come in and sweep, vacuum, and scrub away any trace of my presence. I packed her financial documents in a box, placed the current bills on top, and added another box filled with miscellaneous junk we uncovered while emptying drawers and cleaning the floors. I left them both on a kitchen chair and placed the signed divorce papers on the table. I also left a brief note on the fridge and closed the door on that chapter of my life. At 3:00 p.m., on Friday, my daughter and I went shopping for bedroom furniture and got her all set up in her room at my place. The newly renovated house looked fantastic, insulated, with new thermal pane windows that mimicked the old ones, restored original plasterwork with refreshed paint and stenciling, an original kitchen upgraded to modern standards, and everything freshly stripped, varnished, or painted. The crew did an amazing job. I like to think they worked so well out of respect for me, or maybe because jobs were scarce and I paid well. That Friday night, Sarah called at 9:00 p.m., hysterical. I listened just long enough to hear that she had discovered she was bankrupt. I told her, "Don't cry to me. It's not my problem anymore. Go talk to Mr. Lawsuit, let him comfort you, help you out, and give you money." More screams of rage, guilt, and sorrow followed. "Look," I said, "you're not making sense. I'll come by tomorrow night at 7, so we can discuss this. Sophie is fine, she's with me right now. We'll figure out a shared custody arrangement. We can work around your on-call schedule and emergencies. Don't call me again before 7 p.m. Tomorrow." Hung up. The phone rang immediately. It was her again. "Listen," I said, "don't call Sophie either. She's been in bed for an hour, and your hysterics would only scare her. Be ready to tell me exactly when you want her to stay with you when we talk tomorrow. Good night." It seemed like she assumed I would just wait around until she found a better confidant. She never considered that I might make up my mind quickly. You never appreciate water until the well runs dry. What did she think I'd do? Did she imagine herself saying, "Michael, thanks for cooking dinner and helping with Sophie's homework. After you do the dishes, I know you need to get up early for work, so don't wait up." Mr. Lawsuit called, and he really needs some attention. I can't keep him waiting. Yeah, sure, that's exactly what every husband would want to hear. At 7:00 p.m. the next day, just to irritate her, I arrived late. I had stopped by an Italian deli for a sandwich with crispy artisan bread on the side, so it wouldn't get soggy. I showed up in dirty, sweaty work clothes and boots, having spent the afternoon landscaping at my new house. She opened the door, looking good in a low-cut blouse, thin lace bra, short skirt, and barefoot. Seeing the bag in my hand, she smiled. "Oh, how sweet you brought something for me. I guess we're both sorry. Come on in, I made dinner." "You're mistaken," I replied. "I'm not sorry at all. I'm thrilled I figured out what you were before wasting any more years." I glanced at the table and added, "I didn't bring food for you. I brought this for myself. You do whatever you want with your meal." She looked at me, then at the table, clearly annoyed. I thought to myself, you didn't cook anything. You just picked up some pre-made stuff from the store. You must have come straight from seeing Mr. Lawsuit. You never dressed like that for me. What I said out loud was, "Well, let's eat and talk about Sophie." That's the one thing we still have in common. Now, I assume you're fine with shared custody, and I'm curious if you've thought about when you'll want to have her. I don't want a divorce. This isn't my choice. It's just that I think what Fred and I have might be real, and I need time to figure that out. You've mentioned that before, but the reality you're facing right now is a divorce. I envy your delusions. New love is always exhilarating, but it sure hasn't sharpened your mental clarity. Don't get me wrong, he must be something special. What exactly is it about him that's so appealing? Michael, I'm not going there. I'm not going to compare him to you or vice versa. I'm not asking for a comparison. I'm genuinely curious what makes him so attractive. Fine, I'll tell you. It's not really about the physical stuff. Sure, he's good, but nothing extraordinary. As far as I can tell, he's average in size, but he has this incredible natural scent, not cologne, just his body. It's this subtle, wonderful smell. And he's confident, he takes charge. He's considerate, listens carefully, and gives thoughtful feedback on whatever I say. I feel protected around him. And I want to make him happy. I've done whatever I thought would please him, and he seemed to know what I really wanted, not just what I said I wanted, but what I desired deep down, things I couldn't ask for. Sounds like he's a skilled Don Juan. Well, good luck on your journey of self-discovery. At least now, you don't have to hide your love anymore. No more sneaking around. Michael, I didn't want this divorce. It was your decision. For God's sake, I'm to blame for this. She's out of her mind. Well, divorce it is whether you're ready for it or not. And let's not forget that we're supposed to be talking about Sophie here. She needs stability. She's not going to bed at your house one night and waking up at mine the next. She needs to know who's taking her to soccer practice on Tuesday or where she'll be on Friday so she can make plans with her friends. So if you want to spend time with her, when will that be? And what happens when you're with her, but Mr. Lawsuit calls you in? What will you do when you're running late? I can't answer that right now. This is all new to me. Do we have to sort this out now? As long as you're content with not having her, no, we don't. But things change, and this arrangement isn't forever. So, for now, I'll assume you agree she stays with me, and you visit her when your schedule allows. But you're not just going to drop by unannounced. Call first, and I need 24 hours notice if anything changes. I expect you to be her mother. Let's at least be civil for Sophie's sake. I don't badmouth you to her, and I expect the same. That makes sense. I feel stuck here, but I have to go along with it. At least things are going well in my other life. Glad to hear it. Hope Mr. Lawsuit makes you happy. Sorry I couldn't, but I've realized that was mutual. I wish we could have parted ways without the lies, but here we are. At least now we both have the chance for better companionship. She sighed. Well, I'm off. Michael, you filed for the divorce, right? I didn't. There you go again. You really didn't expect this. You cheated on me, set the bomb, lit the fuse, and now you're wondering why the debris of divorce is falling on you. She was trying hard not to cry. I blew her a kiss and left, the scent of oregano and garlic from my sandwich wrapper lingering in the air. Well, good, we all deserve some happiness, her as well as me. Later that week, my luck took a turn. About 6 months earlier, I had submitted a bid to build a new middle school. It was the largest project I'd ever taken on, and honestly I thought my bid would be tossed aside. I had inflated my estimate by 12% to cover any errors and ended up placing third. Without the 12%, my estimate would have been between the top two bids. A few weeks later, a major bank, Yorkshire Holdings, went under, and the top bidder, a well-known contractor, was indicted for bribing city officials. His bid was rejected. This past Wednesday, the school board called me in for a meeting. They asked if I could stick to my bid as the second place bidder had declared bankruptcy. Construction costs had dropped by 10%, and I predicted they'd fall another 10% in the coming months due to the recession. Normally, they'd rebid the contract, but that would have caused delays, and the city wanted to show jobs by November. My problem was financing, as I had hidden my cash reserves for the divorce. I requested a week to check my numbers and talk to the bank. I spent 2 days with my estimators crunching the numbers. The 20% cost drop had already materialized, and I approached the local bank I'd been dealing with. Initially, they hesitated, but after I explained the price reduction, they agreed. My bid was $58 million, and I had originally estimated costs at $51 million. With the price drop, my costs were now closer to $46 million. The bank verified my figures, and I secured the financing. I was in the big leagues now, with a chance to make over $1 million on this project. Then Sam, the investigator, called me to the cafe for a meeting. He had sound and video of, wait for it, 12 women. My wife and one other were regulars, showing up once or twice a week, with the rest sprinkled in. We both agreed Kane was quite the character. I told Sam to keep going, if only because the footage made for interesting viewing. On Saturday night, Sarah called in a panic. She couldn't figure out how to pay her bills. Sophie and I went over to help, and while she played with the neighbor's kids, Sarah and I sat at the kitchen table. Michael, I don't have enough money to pay any of these bills. No kidding, Sherlock. It's called bankruptcy. You don't earn enough, especially now that you'll need to pay for all the work I used to do around here. You're about $115,000 short annually. Best thing you can do is talk to a lawyer and file for bankruptcy. Don't blow this out of proportion. You're a lawyer, you can't be bankrupt, right? Then pay your bills. Maybe Mr. Lawsuit will pay you for your services. I'm sure he's getting better service from you than I ever did. Sorry, that was harsh. I usually control myself. But really, if he's stuck around this long, you must be doing well both in and out of the office. It's about the money, Michael. I need another $4,300 a month, and a second job is out of the question. Actually, you need closer to $6,000, and that's without any extra spending money. You forgot about taxes. Maybe you should ask your partners for a raise. Look, I need you to help me out with some cash. Did you read the prenuptial agreement you and your dad forced me to sign? I don't owe you anything. Stop paying the mortgage, that's a start. Listen, if I lose the house, they'll rip you apart in the divorce. You'll be left with nothing, you idiot. Sarah, this isn't getting us anywhere. You need to face reality, talk to a lawyer, declare bankruptcy, and walk away from the house. It's only worth about $500,000 now, but you've got a $600,000 first mortgage and nearly another $100,000 second mortgage. If the bank forecloses, that $300,000 of debt forgiveness is taxable. That's my advice, but you should consult a lawyer. I'm not giving you any money. I'm covering all the bills I'm required to pay, but that's it. When our marriage had a future, I made sure you had enough to live comfortably, but you ended that. I give money to charity, and you're not on that list. And when you complain about how unfair bankruptcy laws are, remember that the money you and your dad gave to your congressman has come back to bite you. The system shows no mercy for the indebted. One last piece of advice: never declare war when your enemy is within. Don't even think about coming after me. Thanks to your dad, you can't touch me. We're done here, I said, calling Sophie. Sarah was fuming. Sophie kissed her mum goodbye and we went home. A couple of weeks later, Sarah called, wanting to talk. She asked if I could leave Sophie at home and come over for dinner. I agreed to come at 7:00 p.m., but after dinner I wasn't interested in eating at her table. Refusing her so easily made me realize that I no longer felt much for her, except mild irritation. I could now see through her manipulations. The anger from her betrayal lingered, and probably would for years, but I had it under control. Michael, thanks for coming over. As you know, I'm in a financial mess. The house is going, but I don't know when. I haven't made a payment since you left. When the bank comes, I'll be moving into a one-room apartment. I've broken things off with him. Ah, sweet-smelling Mr. Lawsuit. You figured out you were just another pair of willing hands. Ha! Isn't that the truth? Everyone must have known. Do you know his name? Everyone knows. He's been seeing someone else. You fell hard, didn't you? Yeah, I did. I loved him. I thought he loved me too. I guess I was wrong. At least you landed on your feet. What do you want from me? I want my family back. We've had this talk before. You thought he was your true love, which meant I wasn't. When you put those horns on me, you showed you didn't really know me. And frankly, I didn't know you either. I've thought about it a lot. Believe it or not, I realized I disliked you more than I loved you. We're our past, not our future. And Kane isn't your future either. Nothing between us changes. Michael? The other thing I want is revenge. He strung me along with lies, and I want him to pay. Forget about revenge. Don't do anything. You'll just look like a fool. Lawyers are supposed to be smart, Grounded professionals, not starry-eyed fools who fall for a good story. Don't expect me to take him into a dark room and break his fingers. Remember, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. By the way, I forgot some books here. Mind if I look for them? Go ahead. They're wherever you left them. I haven't read anything in months. Another thing that's wrong with my life. It's all work now. I used to love reading, but I haven't had the time. I grabbed a bag from the kitchen and collected a few novels, though the one I really wanted was the law firm's anniversary book. I remembered it had group photos and names which I needed for some research. I had a different plan for Kane, but there was no point in telling Sarah she'd catch some of the blowback. When I got home and flipped through the law firm book, I managed to identify 9 women, 2 lawyers, 5 paralegals, and 2 from administration. That left 3 unknowns. I called Alex Pfizer, the investigator, and then my business lawyer. I had come to realize I didn't enjoy being a big-time contractor dealing with suits all day. I preferred being hands-on with the work, especially historic restoration projects. I asked my lawyer to see if there was a contractor interested in buying a business with a solid 3-year contract that would almost guarantee profit. I offered him 10% of the sale price. As for Sam, the investigator, another $3,000 got me the identities of the unknowns. We met at a local cafe, not Starbucks. Sam said the coffee was better. He had connections inside the office, and one of them got the names of 2 women right away. It turned out they were Kane's clients, as were 2 of the women we already had names for. We created a fake newspaper article about the 3rd woman, doctoring her photo to make sure she was fully clothed. My contact brought it into the office and got the final name. The last woman was both a client and a paralegal at Kane's downtown office. I also found her address and family info. I bought a cheap laptop off Craigslist for cash and had one of my guys get me a stolen credit card, just in case. I used the unsecured Wi-Fi at a local hotel, parked across the street so I could log in without needing any identification. I set up a blog account under Kane's name. I then posted the first part of Kane's special team, featuring a group of conversations about the illegals that helped ease my stress. Each one was shown in a portrait with their names linked to a 30-second video clip where both Kane and the women were clearly identifiable. After that, I created a new email account and used some software to send individual emails to a large group without revealing who else was included. This made it appear as though Kane had sent the special team info to each person personally, ensuring that the recipients would spread this juicy gossip to others. I utilized multiple email lists to include both personal and work addresses, effectively covering all bases. Round 1 was a direct hit. As I struck hard against C within half an hour, Sarah called me furious. Michael, do you know what that C did? He sent me an email showing him with 5 of the illegals, the women he calls Kane's special team. I recognized 3 of them well. My God. Sarah, I replied, what kind of man can juggle 5 women? That's crazy. It's probably a fake photo. No, it's not all at once, but in the same room, different times. He's sick, Michael. He recorded everything. Can you imagine? To be with 5 women in a single day takes serious stamina. No wonder you liked him, she snapped sarcastically. Maybe he set up cameras in the room, broadcasting everything to his car, I suggested. He could have shared it with anyone within range. Do you recognize the room, Michael? It's the same motel we use, she cried. Then he probably has photos of you too. Sarah, you might become famous soon. I swear, someone's going to kill him, she fumed. Better hope not. Just send me the link. Besides, I need to meet more women. Gotta go, I said. You're disgusting, Michael, she shot back, clearly upset. The following night, the blog vanished censored. So I created a new blog, sent fresh links to Kane's women, and repeated the same strategy. The gossip mill was unstoppable. As if on cue, Sarah called again in tears. He put my picture in a video. People keep calling nonstop. I'm going to kill him. Calm down. Sarah, someone else might beat you to it, I warned. Remember, you dumped him before this all came out. She muttered, just send me the link, Michael. When I received it, I hesitated, suspecting she might have sent a fake one. But no, there she was on screen. Well, you look good. Maybe a magazine will feature you, I teased. Thanks, she replied bitterly. Kane's been suspended from 2 firms and they're reviewing what to do next. So far, they're treating the women as victims. Now, they're even adding lawyers to the list. Just what I needed. At least the female stereotype works in your favor, for once young lawyer ruins her career for a sleazy guy, I quipped. Screw you, she retorted. What am I supposed to do now? Just ride it out. Stay out of the spotlight. And don't give interviews. Hardly anyone will see the photos, and even fewer will remember. But what do I tell my daughter if she finds out, she asked, breaking into sobs. That's the tough part, one acknowledged. But don't worry, Kane's days here are numbered. This scandal will drive him out of town long before it fades. When I leaked the photos and videos of Kane's interactions with his clients, it was over for him. He lost his license, was sued relentlessly, and his wife divorced him. He fled town and now works for an insurance company in Texas, probably denying claims to people in need. I wondered if his new, lower status changed anything for him. As for me, I wrestled with whether to spend some of the money I'd earned. My friend, who loved antique cars, assured me it was a wise investment. So, with his advice in mind, I bought an Indian Chief motorcycle, along with another one Kane had for parts. I'd always viewed these as relics and never thought of riding one, but I figured it would be fun. I took lessons, and soon, I didn't envy my brother's toy anymore. I had the real deal. Later, I called the Life Giver and asked if they had any more Give Blood t-shirts in size small, offering $250 for whoever found one. The woman on the phone said she could arrange it, and we agreed to meet on Tuesday night. She was friendly, and we had a good laugh about my t-shirt plan before exchanging emails. A few days later, I took Sophie out shopping, getting her a pair of red sneakers. She wore them along with the t-shirt when we rode my bike to Sarah's house, just before her foreclosure. Sophie ran inside, proudly showing off her outfit and shouting, "Mom, look at Dad's motorcycle." We rode over on it. "Have you ever been on one like this?" Sarah's eyes widened. "I did once," she said. "It was fun while it lasted, but it ended in a crash." "You better be careful, Michael," she warned. Sarah actually tried to sue me, but thanks to our prenuptial agreement, she got nothing. She lost her house and had to declare bankruptcy. Not all debts can be wiped out that easily, though it take her years to recover. Being the nice guy that I am, I sent her father a $1,300 check, thanking him for his idea of the prenup that saved me a fortune. He returned the check without a word, so I donated it to a liberal advocacy group under his name, listing him as the donor. As part of the bankruptcy process, Sarah had to provide several years of tax returns. For the first time, she actually reviewed them carefully and realized how much more I had earned in the year of our divorce, particularly from the sale of my business. She was shocked and demanded to know why I hadn't told her. I reminded her that I had shown her, pointing to her signature on every tax return. The income figures were all there, it's just that she had always assumed, being the lawyer and viewing me as a glorified handyman, that most of our earnings came from her. It's funny how we sometimes look without really seeing. Anyway, her worries that I had married her for money were ironic considering how much I made. I think the idea of being the breadwinner gave her a sense of power. On the bright side, she's still young, attractive, and as much of the world now knows, much better in bed than she ever was with me. I'm sure she'll have no shortage of new suitors. A year later, I sold the motorcycle. While it had been fun, I wasn't riding it enough to improve as a rider, and frankly, I just didn't enjoy it that much. My friend was right, though it was a solid investment. I sold the parts bike for what I paid for both, and the good bike went for double what I originally spent. After getting rid of the bike, I began focusing on my new ventures. The money from the business sale gave me the freedom to pursue new opportunities, so I invested in a small, profitable construction company that specialized in restoring historic homes. I loved the work. It kept me connected to the craft without having to deal with the business world all day. The jobs were steady, and the profits were solid, but most importantly, it kept me focused and away from dwelling on Sarah. Meanwhile, Sarah's life continued to fall apart. The foreclosure went through, and she ended up in a small one-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. At her firm, she tried to maintain her professional image, but the rumors about her and Kane had spread, turning her into the subject of gossip. Although she wasn't fired, she was definitely sidelined and no longer on the fast track she once thought she was. It became evident her career wasn't going anywhere. As for Sophie and me, we settled into our new routine. She spent most of her time with me, and our bond only grew stronger. I made it clear she was my top priority and did my best to shield her from the conflicts between her mother and me. We had our ups and downs, but overall she adjusted well. Sarah tried reaching out a few more times, asking for help, and even suggesting we reconcile for Sophie's sake, but I wasn't interested. I had moved on, and there was no going back. During one of our meetings about Sophie's schedule, I told her bluntly, "Sarah, it's over. There's no going back to how things were. You made your choices, and I made mine. Let's just focus on being good co-parents for Sophie, but that's it. I'm not interested in anything more." She didn't take it well, but eventually she stopped trying. She knew, just as I did, that the damage was done and couldn't be repaired. As time went on, my business continued to thrive. I secured several high-profile restoration projects, and my reputation in the industry soared. I had found my niche, and it was fulfilling in ways I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about making money anymore. I was creating something meaningful, preserving history, and it gave me a sense of purpose. Then, out of the blue, I received a letter from Kane. It was a pathetic apology mixed with a plea for me to stop whatever I was doing to ruin his life. Apparently, the consequences of the scandal had finally caught up with him. He was struggling to find work, his personal life was in shambles, his wife had left him and taken the kids, and he was facing multiple lawsuits from former clients and associates. I didn't bother responding. He had brought this on himself, and I felt no sympathy. He had underestimated me, thinking I was just a naive husband he could manipulate. He had no idea what I was capable of when pushed to my limits. As far as I was concerned, he was getting exactly what he deserved. Sophie, meanwhile, continued to thrive. She was excelling in school, making new friends, and getting involved in sports. I made it a point to be there for all her games and events. We took trips together, just the two of us, and those moments became the highlights of my life. She was growing up quickly, and I wanted to be there every step of the way. As for Sarah, I heard through the grapevine that she eventually left the firm. The whispers of her affair with Kane had damaged her reputation too much, and she couldn't escape them. She took a job in a smaller town, hoping to start fresh, but by then it was clear her career had peaked, and she would never reach the heights she once dreamed of. In the end, I was thankful for how things turned out. The betrayal that once threatened to destroy me had instead driven me to discover my true calling and brought me closer to my daughter than I ever thought possible. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good. I had learned some hard lessons, but I came out stronger in the end. That's where I decided to leave things no more looking back. My future was ahead of me, and I was ready to embrace it fully. Thanks for tuning in to this story of love, betrayal, and finding purpose after life's toughest challenges. What would you have done in his situation? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. See you in the next one.